Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 245. We're going to be interviewing Alex today. How you doing, Alex?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you ready to do this? Excited to dive in here?
Yeah, it's a first time I've kind of done anything like this, I guess. But yeah.
Well, this is the first time for everything, right? You got to expand your horizons.
Yep.
So yeah, like we were talking about before, my first question to you is tell me a little bit about your childhood and growing up.
I grew up in your regular suburban family. I'm one of three kids. I'm the middle kid. I got an older brother and a younger sister. My mom was an addict. And it was gone on for many years.
What
And
was she addicted to?
painkillers was her DOC. And I was so young that and a lot of it was I guess kind of pushed into the closet, if you will. And so it wasn't really talked about until I got old enough to talk about it. But yeah, because I guess since I was born, she didn't use during my pregnancy, or her pregnancy with me, I should say. But since I was born, I guess she had been addicted to painkillers and caused a ton of stress on the family. And
Do you know
the
how
diff-
it started? Was she prescribed them or
yeah, so as she was younger, I'm not certain what age it was at. She was struck by a snowmobile, and she had internal bleeding and they had to perform surgery. And so back then, she had to be cut from the sternum down to like the waistline and then cut all the way across to would get whatever repaired and stop the bleeding and everything like that. So they prescribed painkillers after that. And I believe that's how the whole spiral started.
that
So
sucks? It's so many people. That's how it starts. It starts off as an innocent thing. Doctor says take a few of these, you'll be okay. And next thing you know, it's downhill.
right. And growing up, I always told myself, I will never do drugs because of my mom. And to this day, I've never messed with drugs. Um, I've smoked pot maybe a handful of times. And that's it. I've taken prescriptions as needed because I've had surgeries myself, but alcohol was my vice.
How old were you when you first realized that your mom had a problem?
Um, I was 10 when she passed away. So um, I didn't really know, to be honest. I just, thought mom was sick and the mom and dad weren't, you know, in love with each other essentially, or, there was some bigger problems that I just didn't understand.
How was your social life growing up? How was school and things like that?
So it's kind of interesting because like I said, I grew up in a normal suburban area, and I went from getting elementary school was fine, and I was in third grade, I think, when my mom passed away. And that's kind of when I saw the trend, or looking back now, I see it. The trend where I started struggling in school. I was little bit of a troublemaker, but nothing too serious. And my grades were, I was C, D, and F student. And then years later, my dad met my stepmom, and we moved to a different area and a new school and everything like that. And I maintained a B honor roll all through high school. So it was just a complete 180-degree turn. And I'm a firm believer in environment, that if you are unhappy or struggling with stuff, I'm not saying to run from your problems or run to, move halfway across the country or anything if you're struggling with stuff, but um, surrounding yourself with better people or a better crowd, that had a big impact on it. So it's
Well,
just
they say when you're leaving rehab, the first thing that you got to change are people, places, and things. So obviously the people part, absolutely 120% true. Because I believe, like you said, I'm a firm believer in the environment, and you are who you surround yourself with.
absolutely. And for myself, there is a ton of people that I had to cut out of my life and or distance myself from, but there are I would say, like a little nucleus of friends that I still am friends with today because they are supportive of my recovery. And they, they'll ask me, if, hey, are you okay if I have something to drink, if we're out at a restaurant or something like that. And or they just won't even ask at all and they won't even order anything and stuff like that. So it's awesome that they respect my recovery that much to just know that that's dangerous.
So when were you first introduced to alcohol?
I was 19 years old when I didn't really try alcohol until I was 19. And um, that's the first time I got drunk too. It
How did
was
it make you feel?
um, it felt awesome. I was relaxed and at ease, and I just felt like I didn't have a care in the world. And I came out of my shell a little bit. Growing up, I had ADHD, and I had always been medicated. And so after high school, I decided to take myself off of those because it made me feel kind of like a zombie and just really reserved. And I knew that wasn't my true colors. And so I stopped taking those. And so not being on those and then adding alcohol to the mix was kind of the perfect mixture to get my social life started, along with the partying too.
Do you remember what your first drink was? What kind of alcohol?
Yeah, it was stuff that would be absolute gut rot. It was UV Blue and Monster.
What's that?
UV Blue vodka and then Monster energy drinks.
Okay, Monster Energy drinks. I've never heard of UV vodka.
Yeah, it's cheap.
It's cheap, disgusting stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, and then that's kind of when the partying and chasing girls and just being a 20 something year old kind of started.
So what happened? So you graduated high school?
Yep. And
What
then
happened once you graduated?
once I graduated, I attended community college for a semester during the summer. Because my parents were, said either you're gonna go to you're gonna go to college this summer or you're gonna get a second job. And I didn't want to work a second job now that I wish I had, but I attended for a semester and I failed, and I was just like, college isn't for me. And I wish I would have tried to stick it out and do it again, but at the same time, I don't. But yeah, after that, I moved out on my own when I was 19 and started to rent a basement from somebody. And then after that, it just was trying to find my way in the world, and I bounced around and um, just honestly trying to find my way.
So tell me about the progression of your alcoholism.
So, like I said, the my first drink was at 19. And I just kind of went through the partying phase through my early 20s. I still wasn't really heavily involved with alcohol until I was probably 22. And that's kind of when I started, hitting it hard. But it was still more of a social thing. And as the years went on, I would say year 25 was kind of when it started to grab hold of me, where I was drinking more at home. And it was as soon as I would, because I would have alcohol in the house, and as soon as I would empty a bottle or a case of beer or whatever it was, I would, stock up. So I would always have something in the house. But and it progressively changed into, drinking when I get home from work and right away, and drinking through the night, and then going to sleep. And it was every weekend, and then it was sporadic throughout the week and the weekend. And then eventually, before I knew it, it was every single day. And then it was when I'd get off of work, when I'd get up in the morning, and then soon enough, I wasn't even able to function throughout the day without, putting alcohol in my system to ward off the hangover, the come down, or the withdrawals eventually. And that's kind of when I knew I had a problem, is when I started to hide it from people and play it down, and just it became bigger than me way quicker than I thought it would ever. And that's when I realized, I need some help. And I went through some pretty rough relationships, and that revolved around drinking. And so it just added to the mixture. And it was super toxic and abusive. And so, ultimately, it just led to more drinking. And on top of my alcoholism, I had got injured at work. I want to say it was around 2019, 2020. 2019, 2018, actually. And I had to have surgery on my ankle and be off my leg. So between the pain and boredom is really what elevated drinking and the frequency of it as well. I was, drinking at home, watching TV, movies, playing video games, things like that, because I couldn't go anywhere. I had to be off my leg for 12 weeks. So by the end of that 12 weeks, I was drinking half a bottle of whiskey like every other day, and or a bottle of whiskey in a weekend. And that was when I just needed to get my hands on whatever I could when I could, and try to maintain a job. And ultimately, I ended up getting fired because I couldn't hold down a job. I couldn't show up on time. They could probably smell it on me, but I didn't. I was just played it off like, oh, I'm really tired, and but I ended up drinking on the job, and I could have severely hurt somebody. But I got to the point where I got so depressed from my drinking and the relationship that I was in. I just wasn't happy, and I couldn't afford my bills, and it's a very dark path. And I started to isolate myself a lot. And I had moved to a urban area. It was the west side of St. Paul. And I'm not a city person at all. Stresses me out. I'm just one of those people that prefer a majority of peace and quiet, and not the hustle and bustle of a city. And so it was just heightened anxiety, and I was on alert all the time, and it just paranoia. And I thought it was going to be a good change, but it was the polar opposite. So I just locked myself in my duplex, and just drank and drank and drank. And I didn't really have a purpose. I didn't, I was so down on myself and didn't know what to do because I didn't ever think I was going to get to this point. And there was a point where I started to isolate myself so much that some of my good friends and um, my buddy and his wife they were trying to reach out to me, and I had mentioned in passing to a few people that I need help, but I wasn't. I mean, I was serious, but I wasn't taking the initiative to do anything about it. And they came knocking on my door because I wasn't answering any phone calls or text messages, and um, I was laying in my bed, and I heard someone at my door. I didn't even move. And they came in and they were crying. They thought they were going to find me dead. Um, and that was kind of my first wake up call. Besides the physical ailments that I was dealing with from the alcohol. Um, like I had mentioned, the withdrawals and just being sick. And shortly after that, I got a notice on my door, a pounding on my door, and I was facing eviction. I had nowhere to go, and the landlord allowed me to sign a termination of my lease versus getting evicted. And that day, I actually, he's like, "You need to get out," and like today, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't, I packed up a few things and threw it in my truck, and I actually drove myself to treatment that day. And that was the first step that I took towards recovery, actually.
So how was treatment? Well, actually, real quick before that, what was your use like? How much were you actually drinking?
Um, so to put a rough estimate measurement on it, I was probably drinking a 175 or like a handle of whatever I could get my hands on every 2 days. So it was quite a lot. So
Yeah,
almost a liter a day.
yeah, I was there myself. It was something like that too. Is it enough to drink all day?
Yeah. It's it's terrifying actually. And speaking of terrifying, treatment was at first. Because it's I had known nothing about it. I didn't know what the process was, how what kind of environment most of the time things are, and besides what's portrayed on TV or social media and things like that. And um it was very humbling and not humiliating, but it made me more, like I said, more humble, because I was to the point where I thought I'd never be. And once I kind of got the swing of things, and it was almost like going to school and figuring out the cliques of people, and you know some of the nice guys to talk to, the people you can hang out with, some of the people you just say hi to, and some of the guys you just stay clear of. And so I was in treatment for 32 days, I think. And I ended up going to sober housing after that and did outpatient. And I was sober for about 6 months before I relapsed. And that was due to false confidence. And I had met one of my ex-girlfriends at that time. And I thought, and I was like, I've made it 6 months, I can handle a drink here or there. And that was the farthest thing from the truth. And so then I was, staying over at her house, and that was how I was getting away with drinking, because you'd have to pass UAs at the sober living. And after that, we ended up moving in together, and I just kind of said, screw it with recovery, because I still didn't know a lot about it. And so then my drinking started kicking back up, and it was almost back to square one again. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was, um, with the, withdrawals and the amount I was consuming, but it was getting to the point where people were noticing. And my ex-girlfriend, she said, you need to go back to treatment or we're done. And so that at that point, I didn't want to be done, but I knew I needed to be sober, but I wasn't ready. And so I tried to, make some friends in that facility at that time. um the first facility I went to, it was kind of like a dorm setting where there was probably, I'd say, 40 to 50 guys maybe. And every room had two guys, and then there was two rooms that had three guys. And so it was more of a, I guess, um regimented setting. And get up, make your bed, you have to go eat at this time, you got to be in class at this time, you get free time at these hours, and lights out at whatever time. And then the second place I went, I'm really glad that I went, because it was just a house that they made the upstairs into the living quarters, where each room had two guys in it, and it was a maximum of six guys, so it was very small. And they held class and the treatment, programming and all that stuff in the house. And then we had it 2 times a day, and by like 3-4 o'clock we were done. So then the rest of the evening we were free. And for both of these, you couldn't leave, or anything like that. We would leave as a group to go do stuff like, go to the park and walk around, get exercise and things like that, even though we had a yard and stuff like that. But I did end up making a friend while I was in there, and he didn't live far from where I was living at the time. And I was like, we'll hang out and we'll work on our trucks or vehicles and hang out. And he had gotten out, I want to say it was just before me or just after me, and I showed up, and he was drunk. And so I was kind of uneasy, and I didn't know what to do, and I was unprepared. And um I didn't know I was triggered, and I was still learning how to recognize those feelings and the different emotions that go with it. And before I knew it, I was in the parking lot of a liquor store, and because I had left the situation, which was the good thing to do. But after that, I turned to my coping mechanism, which was drinking, and I had a bottle in my hand. And following that, it went to, hiding it and telling people, I wasn't drinking and things like that. I mean, who knows how many people could smell it on me or tell or whatever. And ultimately, it got me kicked out of where I was living. And I bounced to another buddy's house and couch surfed essentially. And just kept hopping around because I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't afford a place. And eventually, that buddy that I was drinking with, or that sparked the whole drinking, the second time around, I ended up living with him for a while. And two alcoholics living together does not bode well for anybody. And at the time at the time we broke up, my girlfriend at the time and I, I was planning on getting a dog. And um, if anybody knows me, that's the biggest and easiest way to become my friend or like bribe me, or like that's my soft spot is dogs and animals. And so I had finally I was getting my own dog, and I was essentially living on my buddy's in his spare bedroom, and I got a puppy, and um I bounced around and ended up at my buddy's house. And 2021, I got my first DWI, and I thought that would be a wake up call. It wasn't, and then um, it caused more harm and issues, and relationship stress on everybody I knew, and then I, like I said, kept bouncing around. And then for about a year, I slept in the basement of my friend's house that she lived with her dad, and I lived in their basement. And I kept drinking. I was able to maintain a job, even though I didn't have a license, a car. I didn't have any of that, but like he didn't have me pay rent. So I I was drinking all the time, and going out with friends and doing stuff like that, and trying to date. And it just, I didn't really do anything for myself in that time besides, you know, raise my dog. And at the end of the day, like I had said, I didn't have a purpose before. My dog really ultimately saved my life, because I was able to stay sober enough or not drink enough to where, I couldn't afford dog food, or, provide a house for him and the things that he needed. Um, and shortly after I moved out of my friend's house, I lived with another friend for a very short while, and then went to my buddy's parents' house. And I my drinking kept getting worse, and um, my buddy's parents sat me down, and they said, enough is enough, and kind of gave me my final reality check and said, you need to go back to treatment. Like, you can't do this anymore. And they wanted me to get rid of my dog. And I said, no way. Like, I'm going to find a way to make it work. I'm going to find a place to go, and I will check myself in and make sure my dog is in good hands and do whatever possible. And I ended up doing that. And I went to an inpatient place that was actually the same place that I went the second time. But this time I came in with a different mindset, and the mindset of absorb as much knowledge as you can and be just a sponge and listen first and talk second. And I learned a ton, and I was able to get out of there. And I was being patient because the time of the year here in Minnesota, come wintertime in the colder months, there are a lot of places that fill up, and their beds and rooms get full due to the cold weather. And so it's somewhere for someone to go, to stay warm and get fed for people that are also struggling or homeless. And so I actually had to wait in inpatient for 2 months. I was there for 61 days or 64 days or something like that. So it was double the time that most people are there. So I was just teaching myself to be patient. And I ended up going to a different residential treatment center, and where you could leave, and you had more freedoms. But it wasn't my first pick, and I was on the waiting list for the place I wanted to go. And for some reason, after I went there, I was just like uneasy. I had a gut feeling that it just wasn't where I was supposed to be. And 2 days after being there, I got a call saying that a bed opened up for me at the place I wanted to go. Do you want it? And I said yes. And we, you know, got all the paperwork and, the medical insurance and all this other stuff lined up. And I transferred out of there and went to the place that I went to. And that was an experience that changed my life. The staff was awesome. The people that were just at the facility, and it was like a mini college campus essentially. It wasn't big by any means, but it was, there was, I want to say, 4 buildings. Like there was the main building that was where programming was held and where all the offices for the counselors and people that were working were at. And then there was the building where, you would eat or get your meals, and people that lived on the top floor. And then there was another building that was like a giant mansion, and that's what they called it, was the mansion. And it was kind of like a hotel type vibe where, there's 2 guys to every room, and it was a shared bathroom. So actually it was more like a dorm. And then the building that I was in was, still 2 guys to every room, but it was a lot smaller, a lot quieter. And we had two bathrooms, and it was just an overall better experience. And while I was in there, I met my fiance, and she's in recovery as well. And things just continued to get better as I got, more and more time under my belt, and lived a life of recovery. I'm just shy of a year and a half now, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And my life has made a 180-degree turn. I got a new home. I got a new truck. I am going to be becoming a stepdad. It was just awesome. And I got a lovely fiance, and I got an awesome job. That's just, I'm just forever grateful.
That's great, man. I mean, you've come a long way, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So tell me about how life, what's your future, you think? What do you foresee for your future?
Um, just maintaining my sobriety and recovery, and just using that as ammunition to keep myself sober is, all the hard work that I've done. And, I look at it as the problems that I have now. If I was drinking, it would be 100 times worse. And that, like, how I would deal with problems then versus now, and the problems I would have, that they would compound themselves if I was drinking. So I just use that as a reminder, and that, I have almost a year and a half, and so all that time, is it worth to throw away for, a little while I feel a little intoxicated? I don't think it's worth it anymore. It's just, I look back at how much havoc is and destruction it's caused, and it's not worth it. So I just plan on staying sober. I want to be the best dad that I can, the best husband I can be, and just continue to work on myself, because I'm not perfect by any means. There's still things that I deal with, and it's not necessarily normal stuff, but it's a lot less than what I was dealing with. But I go to, so I still attend an AA meeting every once in a while. But the group that I go to is called Celebrate Recovery, and it's all across the country. But there's a handful of them right here in Minnesota, and it's a Christian-based group. Where it ties in your faith with your recovery, and it's not specifically for alcoholism or drug abuse, or it's not like NAAA or all the different subgroups that they have, and it's not for everybody, but it's helped me and changed my life. And it's the people that I met there are amazing. And so I continue to go to those, and I plan on continuing to go.
That's great, my friend. I'm happy for you. Like I said before, it sounds like you've come a long way. You got a long journey, but all that matters is you're out on the other side of that tunnel and you're doing good.
Right. And
So,
yeah, go ahead.
no, you go first.
I was just gonna say it's definitely a scary road, but it can be done. I'm living proof of it.
Yeah. So, did you want to throw anything else in before we go?
I just my advice to anybody that watches this or listens to it is, as much as it seems to be humiliating to ask for help. You have to want it, and it's okay to ask for help because it is so much larger than yourself. And if you ask for help, there's people out there that want to help you, and they want to see you succeed. And ultimately, it comes down to, I'm sure people have heard it many, many times, but it's one day at a time. And even if you have to, 1 minute at a time. But like I said, I'm living proof of it. But yeah, and you just ask for help and be about it if you're gonna do it. That's all I got.
All right, my friend. Like I said before, I think this has been a great interview. And my last thing is, I want to thank you for doing this today. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, my friend, hang tight for a minute. And for everyone watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can also check us out on all social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, we're on it. Also, check out our website, www.addicts-anonymous.com. There's plenty of free resources as well as free literature there available. So I really hope you enjoyed today. And until next time.